Good night, everyone. Welcome to IN, a series of live online conversations with practitioners in the visual arts. IN is broadcasted by New Local Space, a micro gallery and contemporary arts initiative in Kingston, Jamaica, and a subsidiary of audio production house Creative Sounds. NLS's 2014 programming is made possible with support from Creative Sounds Limited, as well as Alice Yard, a contemporary art space and network based in Port of Spain, Trinidad and Tobago, which since 2006 has run a program of artist projects and residencies, discussions, readings. Good night, everyone. In host Nicole Smythe-Johnson will be interviewing Ebony G. Patterson about her performance art piece Invisible Presence, Bling Memories, along with artists Camille Chedda and Serieux and participants Susanne Fredricks and Kemar Hay. The project took place on Carnival Day and was a gesture of remembrance for the voiceless and the invisible in our society, and inspired by the still nameless victims of the Tivoli Gardens military incursion of May 2010. I'm going to give a little background on Ebony as well as her artistic team, which consisted of Camille Chedda and Serieux, before we start the conversation. Ebony G. Patterson was born in Jamaica in 1981. She received her Masters of Fine Arts from Washington University in St. Louis in 2006 and her Bachelor of Fine Art from Edna Manley College in Kingston in 2004. She's an Associate Professor of Painting at the University of Kentucky in Lexington. Awards include a William H. Johnson Prize, where she was a finalist in 2013, a Musgrave Medal from the Institute of Jamaica, Small Axe Magazine and Andy Warhol commissioned grants, and a Rex Nettleford Fellowship in Cultural Studies. Recent exhibitions include Dynasty, Patterson's first U.S. solo museum exhibition at the Nerman Museum of Contemporary Art, and Caribbean Crossroads of the World at the Studio Museum in Harlem and Perez Art Museum in Miami. Upcoming exhibitions include En Masse Carnival and Performance Art of the Caribbean, curated by Krista Thompson and Claire Tonkin for En Masse, and Gold at the Bass Art Museum in Miami, and a solo exhibition at the Kohler Art Museum in January 2015. Patterson will be in residence at the Lux Art Institute in California, culminating in a solo exhibition in the spring of 2015. That's quite a hefty resume there, Ebony. Camille Chedda received her MFA in painting from the University of Massachusetts, Dartmouth. She most recently exhibited at the National Gallery of Jamaica in the exhibition New Roots and currently teaches painting at the Edna Manley College. Serieux is a Jamaica-based filmmaker from St. Lucia. She's the co-founder of New Caribbean Cinema, a film collective based in Kingston. Her main interest is in developing an original Caribbean cinema style or aesthetic, and her practice currently lies at the intersection of independent narrative cinema production, documentary filmmaking, and interactive innovation. Her work has screened at film festivals in the US, Caribbean, Africa, Europe, and at institutions such as the British Film Institute, the Brooklyn Museum, and other art spaces. In 2013, she won the Royal Bank of Canada's Emerging Caribbean Filmmaker Award and also became the first Caribbean recipient of the Tribeca Film Institute's Worldview Documentary Fund. Kemar Hay was a volunteer participant who performed in the performance, and Susanne Fredricks, a gallery owner and human rights activist, gives her perspective in the conversation as an onlooker on Invisible Presence, Bling Memories. I'm going to hand over the conversation to be hosted by Nicole Smythe-Johnson. Nicole, take it away.
Bro. Thank you. Good night, Ebony, Camille, Michelle, Susanne, and Kemar. I hope you guys are having a good night. I'm looking forward to an exciting conversation. Before we get started, though, I want to remind our listeners that they are welcome to send in questions via Twitter at NLS Kingston and via email at nlskingston@gmail.com. I'll start with a question for Ebony. What were your intentions or preoccupations in developing Invisible Presence?
Well, I guess Invisible Presence in many ways was inspired by two projects that I've been working on, or that I have worked on and have been working on over the last few years, or last 2 or 3 years. In 2011, I was invited to participate in a residency at Alice Yard. And during my time there, I staged something that was very similar to what we did on Carnival Day, I built 9 coffins, one for each murder that was committed during my 2.5-week stay there, and then marched the coffins through the community called Woodbrook, which is where Alice Yard is located. And I collaborated with a music group called Three Canal to make a sound piece that accompanied the bearers who carried the coffins on the evening of the performance. And so we kind of marched around Woodbrook and then marched back into the Alice Yard compound. But at the same time, just around that time, I had just started doing this project called the Of 72 Project. And so the Of 72 Project was essentially marking or looking at the numbers of people who had, well, at the time, the number 73 was a reoccurring number for those who were, who were said to have died during the incursion. It was a number that we heard most prominently, but the reason I called the project the Of 72 Project and not the Of 73 Project was because based on the number 73, 72 of those people were male and only 1 was a female. And I think that also said very clear things about the agendas going into Tivoli, the way certain things or certain people were considered, or people of a certain gender were seen and considered going into Tivoli. So after Alice Yard, and especially since I was doing the working on this project at the same time, I had imagined that it would have been great if I was able to take the Of 73 project into a kind of, or the Of 72 project rather, into a performative experience. And so I didn't have the funding to build 73 coffins, which is what I really wanted to do, and then en masse presented this opportunity. So for the actual project Invisible Presence that we staged during Carnival, while I was not able to build 73 coffins, again because of budgetary constraints, I was able to build 50. So it was important then for me to think about creating a very arresting moment, and to create an arresting moment in a space where certain kinds of people, because of their socioeconomic standing, may not have a certain kind of visibility. And so both the En Masse project and also the 9 of 219 project, which I did in Trinidad, both pulled from the traditions the traditions of a Bling funeral. So a Bling funeral is it's been a growing practice within working class communities, particularly in Kingston, Jamaica, and so essentially it's a fusion of traditional funerary practices and dance hall aesthetics and the kind of lavishness of dance hall. So fusing popular cultural practices with traditional funerary practices. But one of the things that I've always thought was so powerful about a Bling funeral is that it is such a powerful declaration of what it says is, you may not have seen me during my life here, but before I exit this world, you will damn well notice me. And I think that is a very powerful way for somebody to proclaim their sense of presence and to proclaim their identity. So for the project, it was really important that this didn't happen for me in an inner city community. It was really important that it didn't happen downtown, and we had these options which were presented to me at some point when we started running into problems, but I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit later on with the project. It was really important that this happened in a space and in a mechanism that shows a very clear sense of absence of a particular socioeconomic group, and reflected. I think this is reflected quite clearly in our carnival.
In Jamaican Carnival.
In Jamaica Carnival, right?
Yeah.
In Jamaica Carnival, and then also too, I think the other thing that I've realized that in our own carnival, we've adopted a section or a portion of Trinidad Carnival, which is what's referred to as bikini mass or pretty mass. But there is the old tradition of carnival, which is called old mass, essentially what carnival was built on, which is protest, taking one's grievances to the street, but doing it through pageantry, doing it through masquerade. That does not exist within Jamaica Carnival. So I wanted to look at our own practices, our own involvements as it relates to masquerade and pageantry, which I think is very, if we think about dress and how important dress is, for example, within dancehall space, it is very much about pageantry and masquerade. And then when we think about a bling funeral, it is very much about creating a spectacle.
Yeah.
And I thought that would be a really interesting way to insert our own local practices into a mechanism that has yet to really recognize that.
Yeah. And I practice in the bling funerals that is related, or at least more related than bikini mask, to that old mask concept that you were talking about, that has that kind of social commentary
right
to it. Yeah.
Right. And I think also too, the other thing is that there is the exclusive versus the inclusivity of our carnival. So our carnival is very exclusive. There was an interview done on ER Entertainment Report for our international listeners who don't know what that is. It's a local television television program that covers weekly happenings in the entertainment world. And when Carnival was covered, and we got 2 weeks coverage, which was really nice, but when the larger Carnival was covered, one person commented on the fact that they liked the exclusivity and that they wish it was even more exclusive, which is contradictory to what Carnival is really about. So, for example, in Trinidadian Carnival, even though you have this bikini mask, there is still the option, or there is still the possibility for 20 friends to get together, make costumes, and take to the streets without having any kind of pushback from law enforcement. The idea of registering a band is open to everyone, but registering a band is really about competing for prizes, so competing for best costume or whatever the case may be. But that option, you don't have to do that. In Jamaica Carnival, it is such an entirely commercial.
Ebony? Did we lose Ebony? Okay. Hopefully she'll be back with us soon. Can the rest of you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear clearly.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to ask Camille a question then. I wanted to ask Ebony a follow-up question. I know that there were some difficulties with getting your permission to participate, but I think that this is connected to your question. So maybe you can talk about both things, and when Ebony joins back, she can chip in. Can you tell us a little about what it was like assisting Ebony with the project? What were some of the challenges? And also, what did your assistance entail? What did you see as the benefits for you personally and or professionally?
Well, as I said, I assisted her on the project. So I kind of worked with her on several aspects of the project. While she was not in Jamaica for a while, but I was handling things like dealing with the carpenter and trying
Hello?
to get.
Hey, Ebony. You're back.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know what happened.
Okay, Ebony is back with us. Camille was just telling us about assisting the project, Ebony.
Okay, go ahead.
Right. So so I was in contact with people who wanted to participate in the project. On before Carnival actually happened, which would have been them building coffins, them decorating the coffins in whatever way they wish to decorate them in, and then trying to get people to actually walk with the coffins on the day of Carnival. And I also worked on the coffins myself. So I guess my main role was to kind of spread the word out there, and get people interested and get people to know exactly what we're doing.
But we've spoken to you guys about the project before, and I remember you mentioning that there was some difficulty in actually participating in getting to March. How did that go? Because you were talking, Ebony, about wanting it to be in a very specific setting and having it sort of acknowledged in a way. How were you able to work that?
Well, okay, so that was tricky. Well, one, we had, okay, so so we had problems with people to march in the initial stages. So like I came weeks before weeks before we set up mass camp at Edna and talked to students. We collected names. Camille, when I I had to leave to come back to teach, so Camille would keep in touch, was rounding up even more people. We essentially had our numbers based on the numbers that we had collected. But as it got closer and closer to the time, the students started to kind of back away. So instead, so like we had two lists. So you had those who wanted to help and those who wanted to match. And some people would sign up for both lists. Some people would sign up for one or the other. So for the most part, we had everyone we needed up to a few weeks before the actual event. But as I when I came back and we started working on the projects, then students started falling off. So I think what happened was that it was like it's the excitement of it all, and then people had time to think about things, and it's kind of funny that these are young people, and they're incredibly timid and they're very afraid. What they were afraid of, I'm not sure, because that was something that kept coming up. Like, I'm afraid something is going to happen, and when you would ask them, what do you think is going to happen? They would say, I don't know. People may not know how to respond to this. People may, so they started thinking of the worst possible thing. But it's not that anything was kind of, it's not that there was anything within what we were doing that was going to essentially, trigger any brash or rash responses, or so I thought. And so Camille was really good about, pushing through the internet. Then we had a few other people like Susanne and Michelle and just, other people generally who wanted to see this thing happen and really believed in this thing and just kind of spread the word. And Deborah also, who was had also passed on the word to different people. So we managed on the day actually to have even more people than the number of coffins. And these people also walked with us. There were moments when along the walk, people got tired, so people would, start finding all kinds of interesting ways of carrying the coffins. They would swap out with other people. You take a break, I do, I do it, and so on. And then the other problem that we also ran into, which was literally the, up to 2 days, and actually the day before, we were scrambling to have this thing happen. We had applied for the necessary permits. in order to occupy the street. So we got the permit from the KSAC, which we had to pay a pretty penny for just to walk for an hour. But we did not get the permission from the police. And so as part of my process, I decided that I wanted to see, I wanted to test the waters to actually see how, there's been a lot of conversation this year about whether or not the carnival has become more inclusive. As we all, for those of us who know what Jamaica Carnival is, sure, there is the, just like all carnival seasons, sure, you have the road match, but then you have all of these parties leading up. So maybe there's more inclusivity with the parties, but there's certainly not as much inclusivity on the street. So I decided that I was going to write a proposal. I was going to write my proposal to Bacchanal Jamaica to ask them to allow us to just follow behind them. And they said, we don't have any problem with your following. Initially, they said no, actually. And then I asked again because I really wanted this thing to happen, and when I asked the KSAC initially about applying for certain kinds of permits, because Bacchanal Jamaica had already gotten permission to essentially lock down the city, they had the keys, and I was told that I needed to ask them. So I went back to them again, and I said, I'm not looking to capitalize on any of your financial gain. I have my own people, my own volunteers. We have our own costumes. We're not looking to partake in your actual event, but what we want to do is to capitalize on the audience that you have. And they said, okay, well, we don't have a problem with your following us, but you have to go and get your own permits, and you have to, go, and they made mention of the event avenues that I needed to go. So I said, would you be willing to put this in writing? Because remember, the KSAC has already told me I need to ask them.
Yeah.
And so they said yes, and they put it in writing. And I said, you need to put it on letterhead, and they put it on letterhead. And so I took it to the KSAC. And so the KSAC said, okay. Then I took it to the police along with the permission from the KSAC after paying whatever monies I had to pay. And then the police said, well, we don't have the manpower in order to allow this to happen. We've already outsourced all our people for Bacchanal Jamaica, blah, 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 blah. If they're already allowing you to participate, then we don't understand, but we're not going to give you permission. So even though the police, even though I have permission from the KSAC to occupy the street, unless I get permission from the police, then, that permission from the KSAC is totally invalid, and you don't get back your money.
Naturally.
So that's done. So in my moment of desperation, bawling, like, oh my God, what am I going to do?
We do for art.
I have failed. I went back, right? So I actually, before going back, we started calling. I started telling people, and people started calling everybody who they possibly knew. It took me all the way up to the Assistant Commissioner of Police. And I was so, well, it's a Saturday. It's going to be difficult to get in touch with people. Let me see who I can call. And he managed to call whoever the officer was who was in charge.
Guess we lost Ebony again.
Oh, no, we lost Ebony again. It's such a good story. Okay. Let me shift down a little bit then. Susanne, I'm gonna talk with you for a little bit. You're an onlooker, and you wrote on the piece for the Jamaica Observer. Can you tell us a little about your experience of the piece?
Sure. Well, I was meant to be a participant, but because I put down my coffin for a few minutes, to take some pictures, somebody swiped it. So I ended up following the performance piece. And I was just really, I knew it was going to be powerful. Jamaica Carnival, like we've already discussed, comes from a certain place in Jamaican society. And I never go, so it was a first for me to really be there. And as the coffins went up and the parade passed, and everyone's the rum and the soca and the trucks and the excitement, and really just a lot of the rum. To see the coffins kind of come up en masse was a very powerful visual thing. And as it moved down the street with the marching band in the front, with the traditional music, and it was the only live music that was in the parade. And as I moved with it, as you moved into the crowd, more like the onlookers, people were very struck by it, and a lot of people were asking questions, didn't know what it was about. Obviously, it was more all mass thing, and we found that probably the Jamaicans that had been to Trinidad Carnival had some experience of what real mass was. They loved it. People loved it. There were phones out, cameras out, people asking questions, and it was interesting as a whole process as well, because I kind of went through all of that with Ebony, with trying to get the legitimization of what she was doing through all the right channels, and it brought out a lot of issues of that, because when the police refused to kind of give her permission, my take on it was, well, they won't even notice, they won't know we're not allowed, you know what I mean? We'll just kind of join
ask forgiveness and permission.
Well, that's what, when I went to, when I spoke to the people at Bacchanal Jamaica, they said to me, well, we know who to call, but just wait just wait until we get to the last truck and then just follow behind us, which I thought was also really interesting, interesting too, and so essential, and that's what we ended up doing. So the police were, just as well. You're right, Susanne. They were just as confused, but then too confused to do anything about it.
Unfortunately, not uncommon.
No, and they followed it quite. They looked very bemused by the whole thing and had no idea what it was about. And I felt it was important to try and write about it. I didn't think any print media was going to pick it up. Obviously, a couple of TV stations had. And so I approached a handful of journalists that I kind of have to deal with work on a regular basis. And I didn't get a response from anyone but the page 2 style section on the Observer. And I had an hour to write something. I offered to write an interview. I didn't realize she had some carnival supplement coming up that 2 days later. So what I ended up writing was not what I'd offered to write. I kind of wanted to do an interview, something more in depth, And I ended up having to give something quite skeletal. But I knew she was going to feature the imaging, or the pictures. She found it very interesting, but it's interesting as a reflection of Jamaican society that's where it ends up, in page 2, not as some kind of activist, protest, a new voice in the whole Jamaica Carnival scene, as well as a social commentary about, what we really need to look at as a society as well.
And Susanne, I know you also brought your teenage son with you. What was his response to the project?
Well, he enjoyed it. He didn't really get it though. He's 12, so he was around for Tivoli.
Not quite teenage.
Young, not quite. But he loved the costumes. The coffins were too heavy for him to carry, but and he got tired as the procession went along, because it actually ended up going much further than intended. Because everyone could feel the power of what it was and the impact it was having. So everyone that was participating, they just kept going. It was great. He enjoyed it. He was young when Tivoli happened. He remembers it. He remembers all the gunshots. He remembers being afraid. He remembers seeing it on TV. He knows that people, 73 people died at the hands of the state, and he knows also.
Well, now we know that it's far more than 73, according to Mr. Witter's preliminary report, right?
Right. And I was going to say, like, behind the scenes, what human rights organizations are trying to get to happen is a commission of inquiry. It's very controversial who's on that. And so, in context to my son, he kind of has a secondary knowledge of that because he hears what I'm involved with behind the scenes of that. So when he came, he thought it had to happen. He wanted to come with me, and he doesn't often want to come with me to anything that's art related. He's like, no, I don't want to go. And he was Ebony, so he was and he'd been, in one of Ebony's pieces. So yeah, he enjoyed it.
Nice. And Kemar, you are also a participant, and you brought your own flavor. Can you summarize your experience and what was required from you as a participant? Can you also tell us why you decided to participate and why in the way you did?
Well, funnily, Ebony spoke earlier that about the ER thing. That's how I initially learned about it. I was watching, for some strange reason, I was watching the TV, which I usually don't, and ER came on, so I was just watching. And I saw all the footage about it, and myself and my partner in crime, Randolph, said, that is cool to see that being done. I got corrected. Sister Mary Ignatius. So we decided that that's cool. And about half an hour later, a mutual friend of ours showed up and like, come with we forgot to carry some coffin down the road and something. I said, what do you mean by that? Him said, well, my friend Ebony is going to have some kind of parade if you guys would want to come. And it's very simple, but the coffin them heavy. So we say, all right, then we'll do it because we just watched it on TV and we thought it was cool, so why not? So we thought it was a great artistic move because Jamaica has never seen anything like that. So we decided we're here talking as artists ourselves and like, what is the dress code now, Leisha's like, I don't know, you just dress like anything. So we decided, all right, since we have to make a scene, we have to be a little bit controversial and push the envelope as we artists usually do. So we decided that we started to ask what we can dress up in. We decided on a cardinal, and then we decided, no, let's find something else, a priest. Then we say, you know what? The best thing to go dressed as is a nun. So we went down to, yes man, so we went down to downtown, Pound Fabric, bought up all these black and white fabric and cut and stitch and everything all through the night. The next day we were still stitching until the time to hit the road. So when we went there, we didn't know what to expect because this is now the first time we're going to meet Ebony. And everybody had a riot. And the public, as a matter of fact. So, I mean, you should have seen people looking at us in the car, driving like two mad people down the road to go catch Ebony by the time that was originally scheduled. Everybody was like, what the hell? Because nobody has ever seen anything like that, because it was amazing though. And the whole experience, I mean, I've been to Carnival, I've done it, and I've never seen something like this done in Jamaica. It shocked people. When they talk about taking pictures, I mean, if we were to collect $1 for every picture we took, I mean, we would have been millionaires right now. And I think it's just a shock factor, and then people did not know what to think. What are these people trying to talk about? At one point they thought it was about the bank tax. And next one think that we're protesting against Carnival. And I mean, they were so intrigued because they really wanted to know what was it all about.
Yeah.
And I think Ebony really, really, really captivated the person. And then we created such a presence, and then we disappeared. Nobody knew where we went.
It's true.
And that was really important. It was important to create a very visually arresting moment, but it was also important to create a very arresting moment through our absence. So what did it suggest by certain people by this
No, lose Ebony again?
Oh my.
Oh my. But
I take her
just
point though, because I do remember just kind of following along for kind of the mid part of the parade and then just going off almost on a side street so that we just kind of merged and drifted off, which I think, obviously I was one of the people marching, so I didn't think about it that way before, but I can imagine that for onlookers it must have been a little bit odd. I do want to before we continue along this trajectory, I do want to talk with Michelle a little bit. Michelle, you're working with Ebony to document the project through film. I just wanted to ask you, what was your approach? How did you guys get together to work on this piece? And of course, when will we be able to see this film? Where? All of that.
Okay, well, for me, it was really a two-pronged approach to the project because aside from documenting the moment for the en masse exhibition that Krista and her co-curator have put on, I'm also creating a documentary project, just a larger project around the moments that people would not ordinarily have been privy to. The behind the scenes drama that would have unfolded from conception to the actual realization of the project. How it started for me and Ebony was I was actually working on a film, developing a film idea. I got shortlisted for a workshop, a Sundance workshop, and I was telling her about it, and I wanted her to be in the film. I wanted to make a statement about what happened in Tivoli, and she said, well, I'm actually doing something in Tivoli. I said, really? And she told me about this project. This was months ago. It was almost a year ago, I think. And it immediately captured my imagination because I'm from St. Lucia. I'm very accustomed to seeing people do old mass, that critical commentary on social issues during Carnival, and it is not a practice that's common in Jamaica, and I was very excited that there was an artist who was bringing this kind of critical perspective to Carnival that I think is missing in Carnival, and just in general. I'm not really seeing artists taking on the hard issues, so I was very, very, very happy to be a part of it because I'm a very socially conscious individual. I'm also very, very political myself, so it was a good match, and I've always respected Ebony's work, and I really relish the opportunity to, one, help her document the process, but also be able to create my own little piece of work around it. And so the film for her exhibition will be part of a larger exhibition in March. I believe it opens, but Ebony can give you more details about the specifics around en masse and when it will be taken to different carnivals and different cities. And the other film, I'm hoping to submit to festivals, but the idea is definitely to get it seen by as many people as possible. Tivoli, what happened in Tivoli is very, very, very serious and very important for everybody, because when one sector of your society is being treated that way, that means it's possible for anyone to have their rights completely trampled on and nullified by the state. So, yep.
So you're working on both a piece that will be exhibited as a part of En masse, and then a broader piece is what you're saying that's dealing more generally with the Tivoli incursion.
Yes, but also, well, the Tivoli incursion, but from the perspective of an artist and what an artist can bring to a human rights issue that perhaps a human rights activist themselves may not be able to do. It's also going to ask really what is the question of, relevance of artists in society, and just how far an artist can go in getting an issue to the public's attention in a creative way.
Yeah, sort of fostering that engagement.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Ebony, I had a question I wanted to ask you a little bit earlier, but we lost you for a second there. I wanted to ask what it was like working on a performance piece as opposed to your other work. I'm familiar with your tapestries and even some painting. But what's the difference in working in performance?
Well, I mean, I think like all of my work is performative, so it's always had multiple moving parts. Um, it's always hit on the performative in many ways, especially the I think the photo-based work, which is the tapestries that you're referring to, kind of touch on that even more because I'm having to construct moments with people. And that's essentially what happens in a performance, is that I am constructing a moment with people. And I am relying on the people or the participants who are involved to articulate much of these ideas that I'm explaining to them. That I'm explaining to them. So and then in a lot of ways, I'm also allowing for a moment where they kind of think about themselves in relation to the ideas. So I'm not, so like for example, even in a, like when we're having a photo shoot, I'll say, well, pose like, like somebody you think who's bad, or pose like a bad man, and then like people's own iterations of that will vary. It will vary based on posture. It will vary based on facial expression. In the same way that, for example, when we came on the day of the performance, even though we were very clear that we needed to walk one right, stop, left, center, stop, and so on. The performance kind of went on because of the heaviness of the objects and combating the wind. And then also the band, the St. Michael Steppers, who were leading us. Because of all of these elements, we then began to all respond in different ways. So we were no longer marching like a funeral procession. We started gyrating, and and then all of these kind of call and response things started happening. So we would like heave and throw things up, or when sticks started, one person's stick snapped and somebody started taking that coffin on their head, and then somebody looks, oh, we could do that too, and then a few other people started taking their sticks out of the coffin and started doing these kind of two-person, the coffins, which was a one-person job, then became a two-person job to carry. So I think in that kind of way, that opportunity for a kind of fluidity, or the involvement of someone else in my process, has always been exciting to me. It's like one of the reasons why, for example, with this project, in working with Michelle, I didn't want to work with her as somebody who was, a videographer who would just come, document, we'd sit down together and edit, and I tell her what I want. I respect her craft as an artist, and wanted to find a way to involve that in my process, in the same way that Camille, when she's making the coffins that she's making, I'm just presenting all the materials to everyone, just like all the Camille and the other participants. I'm presenting all the materials to everyone, but I'm not telling them, oh, polka dots need to go with stripes. Don't use this one and don't use that one. I'm allowing everybody to kind of take their own creative energies into the process. And in the same way, again, when people kept asking me, well, what do we wear? What do we wear? And with a Bling funeral, you wear, you dress up like you're going to a party. You would never ask the organizers of an event, although of course sometimes they're designated parties or whatever, like black and white, or those kind of for the events, but still, you would not ask for that kind of specificity, you know, like what kind of, is the shoes okay to wear, you know, that kind of thing. I want to leave room so that there is this opportunity where it becomes as much mine as it is yours.
I'm glad you did that because I had fun.
Yeah.
I'm glad you did, Kemar.
we have a question from the audience, so I'm just gonna throw it out there, and people can respond. The question is, or it's a statement really, sort of half and half. I wonder if students were afraid to participate because they feel they have more to lose. They are looking to a future without a sure footing. Maybe they don't have enough of the certainty of an art practice, of an established art practice.
And to that I say, nothing in this life is certain. You know, remember Vegas? You know, it only took one rumor to kind of dismantle Vegas's career. Not Vegas, I mean Lexus, you know. Rumor that he was like in the car park giving Felicia in Florida, and that killed his career in like the 90s. You know, I'm saying that, and I think that the reason students, you know, like when we think about generations before, our parents' generation, or even or going back, it has always been young people who have taken to the streets.
Exactly.
It's always been that case, and I think what has happened is that, you know, and it's twofold. So our parents were would have been like the last set of, you know, major protesters, and essentially we haven't really had much to fuss about or to, you know, or to quarrel about. That's one. And then two, at the same time, that same generation who are the last set of fighters per se, were all, you know, have also told us that, you know, don't argue with the police, don't get into it with these people. They've also told us too at the same time that we need to learn how to toe the line. And I think that can be those kinds of conflicts, the need to feel like you could do something, but you're so overwhelmed that something is going to happen. Can paralyze you. That fear, as is what fear does. You know?
Well, I think it's a matter of fear, but people and artists especially need to rely on their courage. If it's not intrinsic, figure out a way to be brave, because here what? Yep. Courage is one of the virtues that if without that one, you can't practice the others. I can't remember who said that. I'm not sure if it was
Yes. I read that this other day too.
But it also boils down to, are these young artists really cognizant of what it is their role in society is supposed to be, or do they even think that they have a role? Because I found it very disheartening to hear young, and it was interesting that in most instances it was the guys who were saying, it was a young male artist who were saying that they would not be able to participate. And for me in filming, one of the most interesting and endearing moments was just watching the women dress those coffins. Camille, Jay, Simone. It was very ritualistic, and it seemed to me that for them, these coffins, they were giving them a character, and they approached it and did it with a kind of tenderness that I found really, really, really.
Well, it's always the women. I mean, but in our society too. I mean, look at what happened with Tivoli. Who are the people who took out? I mean, who are the
the women? And there has to be a point where you put your personal fear aside in service to the bigger goal at hand. And
but ladies, not to break you all, but you have to all understand our culture, especially when it comes on to male and masculinity and all of that. I mean, men in Jamaica are not to show. They are brought up not to show certain emotions. They have been sensitized in such a way that there's a fear of showing such
But
pattern
Kemar,
and
if nobody resists those what would become cultural norms, then what? If Rastas didn't resist, what was the pressure at the time? You wouldn't have Rastafarians, you wouldn't
no,
have them
but
the oral
no, but,
traditional marks, David kind
Well,
of
not
stuff.
just
There
that,
has
this
to be a
calls for
point where
different
you
kinds
push
of
back.
emotions.
Oh wow, guys,
I
too
understand.
many at one time. We have to go in order. Google's getting overwhelmed.
But I understand where you ladies are coming from, but our culture has taught men not to be like that. And the minute they show any form of weakness, they're looked down upon. And
But
Why,
what is
why
weak
is it
about
Okay,
it?
I know Michelle and Susan are itching to respond now, so I'm gonna ask Kemar. Let Michelle say her piece, and then we're gonna hear from Susan.
No, all I was saying, I'm saying what is weak, what is showing weakness in participating in a protest and adding your voice to a social movement, a protest. I don't see any weakness in that, and I think it's up to the people to define themselves and not let the society and where those norms came from or those things that become norms come from. Nobody knows. It's up to us to define that for ourselves and to push back against what will literally put a generation of people in a box and in a casket eventually too if nobody wants to speak up about
Well,
the things.
the truth is that the truth is that it has nothing to do with. I mean, I don't think that it has anything. While yes, there were young men who opted out. There were also young women, and I don't think it has anything to do with gender at all. To be quite honest, I think as a society.
It's just an observation.
Oh, okay, hold on. But as a society, I think we've become very self-involved. Look at the age that we're in. We're in the age of the selfie. We can only see ourselves. The idea that the person next door to us, that what happens to that person does not is going to affect us in the long run. This idea that the idea that what happened in Tivoli couldn't happen elsewhere. Eventually, really? Are we sure about that? Do we remember that Keith Clark was also one person who was also killed during the incursion, but he is not coupled with the larger number of people?
Mm-hmm.
It can happen. It absolutely can. I mean, the other thing that we're talking about Tivoli now, but there are other moments of invisibility. When we think about the young boy from KC who was shot when he was in a taxi cab,
Yes,
shot
I
by a
remember
stray
that.
bullet because some person decided that he was going to be stupid and start just shooting off in traffic, right? What has become of that? You know? So I think there are larger things happening. I think we are incredibly paralyzed. We're paralyzed, and we feel
Can I
like,
say one other thing that I think plays into this in a way? Earlier you mentioned that of the 72 there was one female killed. I think also from my observation as well, and that previous observation was from the moment that I filmed, is what I witnessed. But from my observation of how it is that Jamaican males seem to be targeted by authority, by the police, by security, then I think that element also plays into it as well, because there's a certain protection or a perceived level of protection or immunity perhaps that the young men may have perceived for the women participating, where they figure maybe the police wouldn't get so violent with the girls carrying the coffins perhaps. I think that's one element to consider as well, just in terms of the degree of animosity that exists from the point of view, from the end of the authority towards these young black males in Jamaica. I find that very disturbing as well.
yeah.
No, absolutely, Michelle. I think that is something that we really need to go into more as a society. Unfortunately, that is probably a whole show. And we do have another question from the audience, and I have one more question before we wrap up. The question from the audience is, do you think the piece was a success? And if you were to do it again, what, if anything, would you change? And I assume this is out to everybody. I would certainly like to hear, just because this was such a collaborative.
I wouldn't see anything changing. I would just be pushing for more people to see that they can be a part of anything once they choose to be a part of it, and there should be no exclusion about it.
So Kemar votes for bigger next time.
Yeah.
Ebony, Michelle, Camille.
I would say the same. I mean, I think all I would change about it is that there would be, 100 more coffins.
Yeah.
And people could have picked up and joined from the onlookers, and people could have, everyone on the street could have gotten involved. That maybe that would be the only thing, but that's very hard to do. But I think it was a complete success.
And Ebony, Michelle, Camille.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, I started out by saying that one of the things that I did want to do was to build 73, but because of budgetary constraints, I had to work within what I was,
what was possible,
what was available,
what was possible. So that would be the one thing. It would be to build the actual number, to really give presence and to give place to, and to reflect on the to reflect that visually. That for me would have been really important, and to have also made them a little lighter. Just a little bit.
I think it's hard to quantify or even qualify success for a project like that. I think that the fact that it ended up on page 2 was interesting, because in the same token that it's ironic that it's on page 2, which is the social page, etc. or whatnot, and it wasn't maybe taken as seriously as it should have. I just think it was a bit ironic and very interesting that it would appear there as well, because it gave it a certain visibility within the ranks that group would have been invisible. And so I think in a very roundabout and interesting way that actually worked. So for me, what I would have liked to have seen more of was more serious coverage of the event by the other newspapers and the other media houses who came, and that someone would have picked up the mantle, read the social commentary that you were trying to put out there, and
made
it more visible on the more traditional media.
But I also want to add that I don't think that even though we're pointing out these things, the things that we would have liked, I don't think any, as Michelle, rightly said, measuring success with something like this is, it's very difficult. The fact that it happened, and the fact that it happened where it happened, the fact that people showed up. The fact that we were able to make these things and have people carry them, all of those things make this thing totally worthwhile. And I'm even more excited to see if maybe next year someone else or some other groups may feel charged by this experience to also do something of their own. One of the things is that Trinidad Carnival is a very it's a national experience, so the country shuts down for this national event. The city shuts down in Kingston for a private event. Well, but it's a private event that happens in public space. How can we reclaim our space through the same kind of pageantry that is being pushed through Carnival? Can we tap into that?
Yeah. And also the question of, I mean, well, I don't know, but I think that it's also interesting to think about how you were able to introduce an indigenous form. Obviously, this matter of indigeneity is always very slippery, but to have a Bling funeral as something that is sort of homegrown here in Jamaica, and have that mix with this more imported and certainly watered down form, I think is also interesting, and hopefully we'll see more of that as well. Some innovation. Okay, so we have a few more minutes to go. One really, but can I just hear a little bit from everyone about what their upcoming projects are? Anything that you want to just let our audience know about, so that we can keep following your work.
So well, I am I think the big thing that's on my roster coming up right now, it's the biggest. I would say that it's probably the biggest show that I've ever been in. It's called Prospect 3, and it's being curated this year by Franklin.
Oh no.
Yeah, where'd you go?
Oh no. Okay, well, hopefully she'll be back before Michelle, Camille, Susan, and Kemar can take it.
Well, this happens.
Oh, Ebony is back.
No, it's trying to
She's
feel
not back?
Oh. It's Michelle trying to just put out that info. Prospect 3 happens in New Orleans in October, and it is a really, really big show that she's going to be a part of.
Am I not here?
Oh, yes, you're here, Ebony. No, that's teamwork. That's teamwork right there.
Right, thanks, Michelle. So it's happening in New Orleans in October. Opens on October 25th, and it is and I'm showing several new works in this. This is really you know, I've always said that this is a very, very important moment for the region. Our teachers, 20 years ago or even more, had talked a lot about the absence of our presence in the kind of international stage, and now we are seeing the manifestations of that. We've had 2 major survey exhibitions happen in the last 5 years, and now we're seeing Caribbean artists being involved in these other major exhibitions. Like Site Santa Fe has 2 Caribbean artists. Then we have myself and two other artists who are also in Prospect. But there are it's a really great moment for us, and we have lots of people looking, and I'm excited to be a part of this moment.
Fantastic. And congratulations, of course, Ebony, on that upcoming show. Thank you. Your freeze cover, which I saw, and my heart burst with pride. So congratulations. Michelle, Camille, do you have any projects that you want to do?
Camille has been quiet. Camille, jump in there. What are you up to?
I'm working on some writing and doing essays and papers, and I'm working on a new body of work, potentially for the Biennale at the National Gallery in Jamaica.
Woohoo!
And maybe exhibitions. Nothing set yet. So I'm just working right now.
Great.
Good girl.
Great. All of us are trying to just working right now. I'm working on a couple of long-form projects and a bunch of short-form documentaries in between, and just trying to keep getting better at my craft. That's it. I'm just working and plugging away. This year, an important little project, a little dream project that I always wanted to be able to do. This year is the 100th anniversary of Marcus Garvey founding the UNIA, so I'm actually just working with his son Julius Garvey right now to do a little documentary on just what it is that Jamaica's first national hero was trying to accomplish when he started that organization in August of 1914. And hopefully from there I'll get inspired to do a bigger project around that. So that's a major thing that I'm really happy to be working on. And also a small project about women and climate change and how they're the first responders taking the lead in little communities in Jamaica to get their communities resilient in respect to the impending doom that the climate change is reaching on our island. And also trying to finish this documentary that I got a grant from Tribeca, and trying again to pass the finish line with some other workshops that I've been getting shortlisted for, like Sundance and this and that, and not quite making the mark. So this year is all about just pushing the craft and trying to get better so I can be the best filmmaker I can be. That's it. Woohoo!
Wow, nice. Yeah, I really look forward to seeing more of all of this fantastic work.
CC.
Is that it, Susanne, Kemar? Anything that you want to put out there?
No, I'm good, thanks.
Yeah.
The auction, Susanne, the auction.
Yeah, there's an art auction for Jamaicans for Justice. I do a lot of work for Jamaicans for Justice. I'm a director there. Do a lot of advocacy work with the Child Rights Working Group, and that's just a marathon. You know, there's no, I mean, it's all project-based, but it's a long haul. A lot of it policy-based. So it's kind of, you know, we're doing some fundraising. So we're having an art auction this weekend. And
And where is the auction at?
it's going to be at the Knutsford Court Hotel. They do like this gourmet dinner and art auction afterwards.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, good luck.
Thanks.
Well, as for me, you know, I'm always here for any excitement or anything that once it's related to art and pushing the envelope, I'm always available. And myself, I'm looking now into going back into art and actually exploring going to college for art, because I mean, just experiencing this and being around art students and stuff, it let me realize that I have the same potential, but I've just kept it dormant. I mean, I do my paintings at time. I do a little of everything, but it's full time now to focus on something that I'm passionate about, and art is one of them.
Good for you.
Awesome.
Yeah, no, nice. On that excellent note, let us end this evening. Thank you, everyone, for such a great conversation. And of course, thanks to our audience for your great questions and for joining us for another episode of In.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, guys.
Bye.
It was cool hanging out again.
Bye.